It all started with her laugh. One evening, one glass of wine, and my whole life came crashing down. She didn't steal anything from me. I handed it all over myself. I was 45 at the time, living in a quiet neighborhood outside Dallas, Texas. I had a wife, 2 kids who were already grown, a decent job that paid the bills, and a house with a porch swing and a neatly cut lawn. From the outside, it looked like I had everything a man could ask for. And maybe I did. But deep down, I knew something was missing. I never thought I'd be the guy to screw up his marriage. I wasn't chasing excitement. I wasn't looking for trouble. I thought I was steady, reliable, the kind of man who sticks to his word. But the truth is, when I heard that laugh, when I saw her smile across the room that night, something cracked inside me. And once it did, there was no going back. Every morning in our house looked the same. I'd wake up to the smell of coffee drifting in from the kitchen. My wife, Karen, would already be at the table, scrolling through her phone while her cup steamed in front of her. I'd grab mine, sit across from her, and open my work emails on the laptop. We weren't fighting. We weren't even unhappy. Not exactly. But the spark that once defined us had faded. Our mornings were filled with small talk. Don't forget the trash goes out today. The water bill came in. I'll pick up groceries after work. It was the language of a partnership, not a marriage. Our kids were grown, but still around. Emma, our daughter, was in her last year of college and came home on weekends when she needed laundry done or a home-cooked meal. Josh, our son, was a couple years older, working his first real job at an auto shop in town. He lived with us to save money, which meant he came in late, smelling like grease and cigarettes, and disappeared straight into his room. Family dinners were the only time we all sat at the same table. Karen would cook, I'd carve the meat, Emma would push her vegetables around her plate, and Josh would eat like he hadn't seen food all day. Conversation was thin. Emma talked about her classes. Josh muttered about long hours. Karen reminded them about upcoming birthdays or bills. And me? I mostly just listened. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't alive. And I didn't realize it back then. But that quiet emptiness was already pulling me towards something that would destroy everything. It all changed one Saturday night when Karen and I went to a housewarming party. Our close friends, Mark and Linda, had just bought a bigger place over in Plano, and like always, they invited half the neighborhood. The house was buzzing with people music, laughter, the smell of barbecue drifting in from the back porch. I wasn't expecting anything different. Just another night of polite conversation, a few beers, and the same stories we'd all heard before. And then I heard her laugh. It cut through the noise light, easy, unguarded. I turned my head and saw her standing by the kitchen island, a glass of red wine in her hand. She was young, maybe 25 at most. Long chestnut hair, a black dress that looked simple but fit her like it was made just for her. Her eyes were bright, alive in a way I hadn't seen in years. Mark waved me over. "Tom, meet our new neighbors. This is Jessica, and that's her husband Ryan. They just moved into the house next door." I shook his hand quickly, but my eyes went back to her. She smiled, polite but warm. "Nice to meet you," she said, and her voice matched her laugh, soft but full of life. We talked about ordinary things. Moving into a new house, where the best grocery store was, the traffic on 75. But the way she laughed at my half-hearted jokes, the way she held my gaze just a second too long, it lit something inside me I thought had died. Karen was across the room, chatting with Linda. She didn't notice the way I leaned in a little closer, or the way Jessica's smile lingered. At least, I prayed she didn't. That night, when we drove home, Karen talked about how nice the party was, how happy she was for Mark and Linda. I nodded along, but my mind was still back in that kitchen, replaying Jessica's laugh over and over like a song I couldn't turn off. And I didn't know it then. But I'd just met the woman who would burn my whole world down. After that night, I kept telling myself it was nothing. Just a laugh, just a smile. People meet attractive neighbors all the time. But the truth was, I couldn't get Jessica out of my head. A week later, Mark and Linda hosted a backyard barbecue. Karen and I showed up with a casserole, and sure enough, Jessica and Ryan were there. She was wearing a plain white t-shirt and jeans, nothing fancy. But when she smiled at me across the lawn, it hit harder than it should have. We ended up standing by the grill together while Mark flipped burgers. "You've been in Plano long?" she asked, tilting her head, her eyes catching the light. "About 12 years now," I said. "It's quieter here than where we used to live." "Sometimes too quiet." She laughed softly. "That's exactly what I told Ryan. It feels different, almost like nothing ever happens here." It was a harmless exchange. At least, that's what I told myself. But the way her words hung in the air made it feel like we were talking about more than the neighborhood. Another time, I was helping Mark fix a loose panel on his fence. Jessica came out with grocery bags, balancing them awkwardly. I rushed over. "Let me help with those." She smiled, handing one to me. "You always this polite?" "Just raised that way, I guess," I said, trying to sound casual. Her laugh was quick, light, and it went straight through me. That night, sitting at the dinner table with Karen, I couldn't taste the food. My mind was stuck on Jessica's laugh, the brush of her fingers when she handed me the bag, the way her eyes lingered for just a moment too long. I hadn't crossed any lines yet. But in my heart, I already had. I thought I could keep it under control. Just glances, small talk, harmless moments. That's what I told myself. But those things pile up, and when they do, control is the first thing to go. It happened at another one of Mark and Linda's parties. Their house was packed again, laughter spilling out onto the patio, music thumping from the living room. Ryan had left early, something about work the next morning. Karen, tired from the long week, kissed me on the cheek and said she was heading home. She told me to stay if I wanted, help clean up. I stayed. And Jessica stayed too. We bumped into each other in the hallway. I was carrying a plate. She had a glass of wine. She stopped. So did I. For a moment, the whole house seemed to quiet down, even though I knew the music was still blasting. "You having a good time?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, my voice lower than I meant it to be. Her eyes didn't leave mine. She stepped closer, close enough for me to catch the scent of her perfume. Something floral, sharp, intoxicating. I should have walked away. Instead, I leaned in. The kiss was quick, almost clumsy. But the second our lips touched, I knew there was no turning back. My stomach flipped, my chest tightened, and for the first time in years, I felt alive. We pulled apart, both of us breathing harder than we should have been. She gave the smallest smile, one that said more than words ever could. That night, I crawled into bed beside Karen. She was already asleep, steady breathing, the woman who had shared my life for over 20 years. I lay there staring at the ceiling, Jessica's taste still on my lips, knowing I had crossed a line I couldn't erase. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message. "Had a nice time talking last night." Just 8 words. But they carried the weight of everything that was about to come. I told myself it was only a kiss. But the truth was, once our lips met, the fall had already begun, and there was no bottom in sight. Secrets don't last long in a circle like ours. You think you're being careful, texts deleted, excuses rehearsed, stolen moments hidden between errands. But people notice. They always do. At first it was just looks. Somebody caught the way Jessica and I held eye contact too long. Then, someone noticed us slipping out of a room at the same time. Rumors started, whispers behind drinks. And eventually, those whispers found their way back to Karen. One night I came home late. She was waiting in the kitchen, arms folded, a single lamp casting shadows across her face. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She just asked, calm as can be, "Is it true?" My chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" "Jessica," she said flatly. Her, don't lie to me." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The silence said everything. She stood up, walked past me, then stopped at the doorway. I thought maybe it was gossip. I prayed it was, but you can't even deny it. I wanted to tell her it was a mistake, that it didn't mean anything. But even in that moment, I knew it would have been a lie. The kids found out soon after. Emma wouldn't even look at me. She just left the room whenever I walked in. Josh stared at me with the kind of disgust I'd only ever seen in strangers. And our friends? The calls stopped. The invitations dried up. It was like I'd been erased from my own life. I could have begged Karen to forgive me. I could have fallen on my knees, promised to change. But pride and stupidity held me up like steel rods in my back. I told myself this was love, that Jessica and I were meant to be, that I was finally chasing something real. So I packed a bag. Karen watched me from the doorway. Her face was pale, her voice steady. "Go," she said, "and don't look back." So I went, believing I was running toward a new life. But all I was really doing was burning the old one to the ground. The first weeks with Jessica felt like stepping into a different life. I'd moved into her townhouse off Parker Road, boxes still half open, my clothes stacked in corners like I was just visiting. But to her, it was exciting proof that I had chosen her. We laughed all the time. We stayed up late, ordered takeout, watched movies like teenagers. She held my hand in public, kissed me in parking lots, whispered things in my ear that made me feel 20 years younger. She told me, "You're not like guys my age. You're steady. You make me feel safe." And I believed her, every word of it. I'd wake up beside her and feel like I'd cheated time, like I'd stolen back youth that slipped through my fingers years ago. We drove out of town on weekends, found little roadside diners, blasted music in her car with the windows down. I told myself this was freedom, that this was what love was supposed to feel like. But the shine started to wear off quicker than I expected. Jessica wanted late nights, clubs, friends, noise. She thrived on attention. She liked when people looked at us, when heads turned. For her, it was exciting. For me, it was exhausting. I'd get home from work bone-tired, wanting nothing more than to sit on the couch, drink a beer, and close my eyes. But she'd pull me up, tell me I was being boring, insist we drive to Dallas for a midnight show. One night, when I said no, she laughed and shook her head. "You're acting like an old man." The words stung. Not because she was wrong, but because deep down, I knew she was right. I started noticing the cracks, little things I'd ignored before. She scrolled on her phone constantly, texting friends I'd never met. She talked about wanting to travel the world, start a business, chase new adventures. I wanted peace. She wanted chaos. And late at night, lying awake beside her, my mind wandered back to Karen. Back to our house, our kids, the simple quiet I once called boring. And I began to wonder if I had traded gold for glass. I don't even remember the exact moment I knew it was over with Jessica. Maybe it was when she called me boring again, or when I realized she was dancing with friends while I stood off to the side, feeling like a ghost. All I know is one morning, I zipped my bag, left her townhouse without a scene, and drove back to the only door that had ever felt like home, our house. The porch I used to sweep every Saturday. The door I had walked through 1,000 times without thinking. That night, standing there with my suitcase, it felt heavier than stone. Karen opened it. She looked at me for a long moment. No tears, no anger, just that steady, guarded stare. "What do you want, Tom?" she asked. I swallowed hard. "To come home, if you'll let me." She didn't answer right away. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd slam the door in my face. But then she stepped aside. "Come in." The air inside smelled like roast chicken and laundry detergent. Ordinary, familiar, painfully missed. Emma was on the couch with her laptop. She looked up, saw me, and walked straight upstairs without a word. Josh gave me one look from the hallway, shook his head, and disappeared into his room. Karen set my bag down by the stairs. "You can stay," she said quietly. "But don't think it means we're okay." I nodded. Because what else could I do? That night, I lay in my old bed again. The same bed Karen and I had shared for 20 years. She slept with her back to me. I stared at the ceiling. And I realized coming home wasn't the same thing as being welcome. At first, I tried to pretend things were normal. I went to work, came home on time, sat at the dinner table like I always had. Karen cooked, I helped with dishes, we watched the evening news in silence. From the outside, it probably looked fine. But underneath, nothing was fine. Karen didn't yell. She didn't throw my clothes on the lawn or curse my name. She just watched me. Every time my phone buzzed, her eyes flicked toward it. Every time I came home 5 minutes late, the silence in the kitchen got heavier. I wanted to believe she was trying, that maybe forgiveness was possible. But I could feel it, her trust was gone. And trust doesn't grow back once it's burned down. The kids didn't make it easier. Emma avoided me, like I was invisible. If I sat in the living room, she'd move to her room. Josh was polite enough, but his words were clipped, his tone cold. He looked at me the way I used to look at men who abandoned their families. And now I was one of them. At night, Karen and I shared a bed, but it wasn't the same bed anymore. I'd roll over, wanting to reach out, and she'd shift just out of reach. No words, no fight, just a quiet wall I couldn't break through. One evening, I finally tried. I touched her arm, whispered, "I'm sorry." She didn't move away this time. But she didn't move closer either. She just lay there, staring into the dark, and said nothing. That silence cut deeper than any argument ever could. I had come back home. But I wasn't really back. It didn't end with shouting. No broken plates, no slammed doors, no screaming across the house. It ended with silence. The kind that feels heavier than any fight. Karen sat at the kitchen table one evening, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea she hadn't touched. I walked in, ready to say something about work, maybe about dinner. But she spoke first. "I tried, Tom," she said softly. "I really did." I froze in the doorway. I wanted to believe we could find our way back, that if I gave you another chance, maybe we'd feel like us again. She shook her head, eyes fixed on the table. "But I can't. I can't look at you without remembering. I can't live every day wondering when you'll do it again." My throat burned. I stepped forward. "Karen, I swear." She lifted her hand, stopping me cold. Don't promise me anything." "You already broke the only promise that mattered." Her voice wasn't angry. It was calm. And that calmness cut deeper than any rage ever could. We sat in silence for what felt like forever. The only sound in the room was the clock ticking on the wall, every second dragging me further away from her. A few days later, I was packing my suitcase again. Emma didn't come downstairs. Josh didn't say goodbye. And Karen stood in the doorway, her face unreadable, her voice steady. "Don't come back this time." I nodded, grabbed the handle of my bag, and walked out. The night air felt sharp, colder than it should have been. Halfway to the car, I turned around. The porch light was glowing warm against the dark, just like it had every night for years. And in that moment, it hit me like a punch to the chest. That house, that family, that life, none of it was mine anymore. Not then. Not ever again. The first night alone hit harder than I expected. I checked into a small apartment complex on the edge of town, beige walls, cheap carpet, the kind of place people stay when they're between lives. I unpacked slowly, one shirt at a time, trying to make the place feel less empty. It didn't work. The silence in that apartment was different. It wasn't peaceful. It was hollow. At home, even in the worst of times, there had been noise. Karen in the kitchen, Emma's music upstairs, Josh slamming the front door on his way out. Here, there was nothing but the hum of the refrigerator and the creak of pipes in the walls. I sat on the couch, if you could call it that, and stared at the blank television screen. My phone was silent. No texts from Jessica. No calls from friends. Just silence. I'd traded the chaos of family life for this emptiness. And for the first time, it sank in. I hadn't just lost Karen. I'd lost the kids, the house, the friends, the whole world that made me who I was. I tried to tell myself it was temporary, that I'd rebuild, that somehow I'd find a way to make it right. But deep down, I knew. Some losses don't reverse. Some doors once closed don't open again. That night, lying on a mattress that smelled like stale air and old paint, I finally understood what it meant to be truly alone. The weeks after leaving home bled together. Work, sleep, silence. That was it. No more family dinners. No more birthday parties. No more laughter drifting down the hallway. Just me, my regrets, and 4 beige walls. Jessica, she disappeared fast. A few texts here and there, then nothing. By the time I realized it, she had slipped back into her own life. Young, free, chasing things I could never keep up with. I was just a chapter in her story. She was the whole book I foolishly tried to rewrite mine with. I thought about calling Karen, about begging one last time, but I didn't. Because deep down, I knew her answer. She had given me a second chance, and I'd burned it to ashes. I tried reaching out to Emma. She didn't pick up. I drove by Josh's shop once, stood outside the garage, but I couldn't make myself walk in. The shame was heavier than the Texas heat, so I went back to my empty apartment. Saturday, down on the couch, and for the first time, I said the words out loud. I ruined it, all of it. Not Karen, not Jessica, not my friends or my kids. Me. I set fire to the only life that ever mattered, and there's no rebuilding from that. Now, when I close my eyes at night, I don't see Jessica. I don't even see the apartment. I see the porch light of our old house, glowing warm in the dark. The home that used to be mine. And I know, without a doubt, some mistakes don't get forgiven. Some doors, once closed, never open again. And I was the one who turned the key.